Karen and Ashley here.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I offer the perspective of what children endure in our flawed family court system. I was introduced to my parents' divorce case in therapy after my father said that when I turned 18, he wanted to find me to show me the case and show me how bad of a person my mom allegedly is. During my parents' entire divorce case, no one in the court system paid attention to my best interest. Instead, they focused on dragging out the case for financial gain and trying to paint my mom as an awful person. In reality, she was the only one looking out for me and trying to keep me safe. My mom was accused of parental alienation, which has always confused me. My father himself admitted that he never bonded with me as a child and that him and I never had a relationship. How could she have alienated me from him when there was never a relationship to begin with? My father's lack of involvement with me was his choice, and it is his troubling decision that he was not a positive figure in my life. My mom always encouraged me to have a relationship with my father, as she firmly believes that every child deserves to have both parents in their lives. My father is the one who chose to mistreat me. My entire life, I have only associated my father with fear and abuse. At only months old, I would tremble at the sight of him. One of my earliest memories is when I was forced to go on court-ordered visitations with him. I was around 4 years old at the time. My father would always ask me if I loved my family, and of course I said yes. He would then ask me if I would stop loving my family and only love him. I would say no, and every time I responded no, he would hit me. These visits were the worst part of my childhood, and although it is alleged that my mom prevented them from happening, they did occur. The only exception to this was when my father would cancel or just didn't show up, which was a welcome relief for me as a child. During this case, I was assigned a GAL named Campbell Barrett. I would call him and leave messages, but he ignored me. I got so desperate to get in touch with him that I wrote him a letter begging him to call me and had a family friend help me mail it to him. Instead of helping me, he accused my mom of forcing me to write this letter, when in reality she knew nothing about it. During this time of being ignored, the abuse by my father was only getting worse. I told my therapist about it, and she said that I needed to tell Campbell. I told her I had tried, and she assured me she would get him to call me. He finally did call me the next day, and I told him about the abuse. He told me that I better go on the visits or I would get my mom in a lot of trouble. That's how, at 8 years old, I became suicidal. When the court is ordering you to be in an unsafe circumstance and the person assigned to protect you doesn't care, it makes you think that there is no way out, that your whole life will be abuse, and that the people in power will do nothing to fix it. I'm sorry. The children in family court have no one to protect them. My experience with this caused me trauma that lasts me to this day in the forms of depression and anxiety. I still have to live with the fear of my father showing up and trying to hurt me again. Since the case is so biased towards my father, people in power tend to believe him without knowing the full story, leaving me in danger. I ask that you please put the children first, as no child deserves to go through what I went through. Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize.
It's going to be Mom.
Corruption, collusion, racketeering, denial of civil rights, slander, and perjury. This is the behavior of judges, lawyers, therapists in Connecticut's family court. Our present family court system is set up to fail. With no checks or balances, how could it succeed? You have unethical judges and GALs hiding behind their absolute immunity, all while ignoring children's civil rights and needs. Where absolute immunity exists, corruption thrives. In 2003, John Guild filed contempt charges against me, claimed Ashley was not his, and he wanted Ashley put in foster care. This trial ended abruptly on April 5th, 2004, my birthday. I was never allowed the opportunity to defend myself. With his decision made, Judge Grandel found me guilty of numerous offenses with no supporting evidence. Some examples of Judge Grandel's judicial misconduct are as follows: not ordering John to turn over our requested documents, not giving me due process, allowing a therapist to testify even though she had been off the case for years, being a judge with an agenda to set case law about, in reference to parental alienation. The next trial, December 2005, Judge Solomon ordered John to turn over the documents. We were denied by Judge Grindel, along with John's updated information. These documents showed the following: an attorney agreement stating Lou Kiefer would charge $1 an hour for his time as long as John agreed to continually file contempt charges against me, at which time Lou Kiefer would then bill me at his full rate. John's tax returns, which showed he didn't report profit from the sale of his condo or report the transfer of his new home to his wife. Mortgage paperwork dated September 11th, 2003, with a financial affidavit vastly different from the financial affidavit that was presented to the court a week prior. He indicated he had no child support commitment and both his assets and pay values were higher. The consequence to us. To this day, Ashley lives in fear of her father. Ashley will face a lifetime of anxiety, depression, and other associated medical issues. Ashley and other child victims don't get birthday or graduation parties, a car, or college funds, and other rites of passage their peers enjoy. For me, I will forever be saddled with the guilt of how we ended up like this. Being disabled, I will never be able to recoup what was lost to this system. The financial and emotional burdens were and are tremendous. Lastly, and most painful, is the knowledge that our case is used as a tool to take children away from good parents. No legislation has passed to fix this cesspool we call family court. The Judiciary Committee has become yet another level of protection for this corrupt system and its players. Family court, as is, allows extremely controlling, possessive spouses the ability to continue their control over us. I gave up a great deal of my rights so we would not have a long, drawn-out divorce. I was under the impression that once the divorce was final, the necessity of going to court would end. Here are some suggestions. The Constitution spells out rules and procedures for courts to follow. Force family courts to adhere to these rules. Get rid of GALs. Have consequences for the judges, attorneys, and therapists involved in unethical behavior. Allow we, the victims, to sue for damages caused and grandfather Ashley into that. Stop protecting the perpetrators and protect the real victims. Establish an end game that will prevent parents from having to wait for their child to age out. Strike down Gill v. Gill. Investigate our case. Most important, the first step is to admit you have a problem. Thank you for your time.
Any questions? No? Well, Ashley, I do remember you 5 years ago, right? 5 years ago you came to testify. And 5 years ago you cried. 5 years later you're still crying. But let's see this in a different way. Thanks God that you out of the system. Thanks God that you out of the system, because the system here in Connecticut is corrupt. And it's sad that we pay judges, and you guys sometimes pay for this guardians and guidance, and what they do is they hurt kids and they hurt families. But you was a brave young woman 5 years ago. And I remember you when we talk about abused child or abused children. I always remember you. And I will say again, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. I think that people that are listening to this, maybe we're looking for solutions. And I've been trying for 11 years. It's not easy because there are consequences that people have to pay to come here and testify. And even me, we have to pay consequences. Even me as a state rep. You know, they said about the parents, that the parents are disgruntled, that they are crazy. Well, guess what? We're in the same boat, because they are saying State Representative Miri Gonzalez is crazy. You know, she's been listening to all these parents. She's crazy like them. But I know in my heart, and I know when when it's a pain out there. I know because I've been in court, I've been meeting with people for the last 12 years, and I know that the court system is corrupt. And I don't know how many years I'm going to be here, actually, so I don't know. But I would like to see that we can fix the system once for all, because we got to stop the suffering of families and children. And again, thank you very much for coming. Representative Candelaria, you got a question?
Or, oh, that's okay, we both. I just wanted to add that I will remember this too, but I'm gonna remember you for your strength, for being here, because you had a choice, and you didn't have to do this, either of you, and you chose to do this despite the pain and the risks and all of the costs associated with that. So I'm gonna thank you for that, and be glad that you took that risk and you decided to be strong, and you're here today. So thank you.
May I just add one thing to what you're saying about the risk and stuff associated with that? Sorry, I'm sounding uneducated here, but
I thought perhaps you were quoting me, so that's okay.
No, because I'm off the cuff here. You know, we still, to this day, face ramifications, and we will forever be retaliated against. Because as my poor child had to find out that armed with a guilty verdict against me, it wasn't just the financials. This poor child hadn't seen her father since she was 9 years old. She had a no contact order. During the no contact order, this is just a few of the times, and he sent it registered mail, return receipt. So of course I know he's contacting her with the no contact order. He went, oh, go ahead.
And the worst part of him breaking this no contact order, which does not, these no contact orders, they don't hold up. No one takes them seriously at all, because unfortunately at my high school graduation, he showed up there, which sent me into a panic attack. And I was able to text my mom during the ceremony, and I was like, he's here, I don't want him here. And the police and my school, which my school knew about my circumstance, I asked them the age. The second I turned 18, I asked them, is there something I need to sign so you won't talk to him? And they said, no, we know your situation. They refused to kick him out. The police refused to kick him out because it was a public event. And even though I was scared for my safety and had an order that was supposed to protect me, they allowed him to be there. And so my whole graduation was me being afraid that he was gonna, in the chaos, like, come grab me, take me aside, and I didn't know what would happen.
And I might add to that, because it's very important you know what's going on there. Minnie has been able to hear me testify before, so I'm directing it and begging you guys, please do something. But that no contact order and what she experienced growing up in my town where I live, it was always, as she told me, I can't trust police. They're supposed to be there to help me. And they didn't. I found out that her father contacted both the police and the school system a week prior to graduation. This woman now, who was 18, she should have been asked. They told him because he had a guilty verdict against me, and he showed it to them, that they saw me as the target and that I was the one that caused all of the problems. So that's why he was allowed in to her detriment. To this day, I get no respect from the police in the town I live in, nor will they aid my daughter in any way. We went in as an intelligent mother and daughter to sit down with a supervisor at the police station to try to get them to understand, because the courts told my daughter, call the police and get to safety. And we had a police officer lock us in a room without being allowed to leave or get my very upset child out of there. And he said, looked at her and told her, we're not going to do anything to help you. He's done nothing wrong. So if you're going to do things in the family court and hide behind an order that no one else recognizes, you know, she had to teach her father at 4 how to try to be a father. And now she has to go out in the world after what she's been put through and have to train police and school officials on how to protect her. And what I'm afraid of, and I don't want tomatoes thrown at me, but this, because I was falsely accused of parental alienation, I was falsely accused. And if I had been given the right, this is what would have been shown. I didn't get due process. But as it happened with me, if you pass legislation, you give yet another person the right to claim parental alienation when it doesn't exist. Because the GAL certainly didn't ask my daughter if anything was going on in regards to that. And she told everyone involved that she was being hit because she refused to stop loving me. So where did the parental alienation lie?
If anyone was trying to alienate anyone, every time I had visitation with my father, it was something negative about the rest of my family, who I'm very close with the rest of my family. It was always to not love them and only love him. So I don't see how that's not alienation. I don't see how that's not recognized as alienation or attempt at it.
And lastly, and most importantly, because you need to hear, because all these things that weren't presented to the court in the 2005 trial that I spoke about in my speech, Judge Solomon asked my ex-husband, why do you continually bring your disabled ex-wife into court? Our divorce, my family court experience lasted 15 years, only because my daughter aged out 15 years. So when this judge asked my ex-husband, and this is what is so pathetic, because these unscrupulous people feel that they're safe enough to say the truth under oath with no consequences, because my ex-husband's response was, I want to bankrupt her. I think that you all should really think about this. If somebody comes in with that in mind, I think that they should be barred from coming in and using the court as a way to bankrupt people. It's despicable.
I got a question for you. How long they accused you of parental alienation?
The entire time.
Yeah, but how many years ago?
Oh, how long ago?
Yeah.
Actually, it was probably, I got my divorce finalized in 2000, so it was a short time after that he was saying, I never allowed visits. I did. And that during our marriage, I kept Ashley away from him. And that was the common theme through the remainder 14 years. And I have a picture in here that I would have presented as evidence had I had the opportunity, because the targeted parent never gets to get up and speak for themselves. No due process equals a very sad adult who's gone through this system. But there's a picture that my ex-husband took It's a picture of Ashley as a small child standing on a chair in our kitchen. If you look over her shoulder, you would see, because this is what he brought up, I didn't put school schedules or other activities or doctor's appointments. I didn't let him know. I barred him from it. Over my daughter's head in the background, there's a basement door. With it hangs a calendar that had not only her appointments and my appointments, but my ex-husband's appointments, and I have copies because I kept everything. I saw where this case was going, and I knew to shut up, don't voice any opinion. She will be put in DCF no matter what if I open my voice. But I never, so 14 years straight of the false accusation that I kept the two apart, and I was alienating him.
Well, thank you again both for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, we got another, Representative Candelaria here. Got another
One
question.
quick question, and if you want to answer it,
Sure.
I would appreciate it. But one of the things that I've been hearing from a lot of the people that have testified is the costs associated with this whole process. So if you don't mind sharing a ballpark, what's the cost associated with this process that you've been through, you and your daughter?
Okay. So, as I stated, I'm disabled. I was disabled in 1983. So when I started to calculate what it had cost, it only went up to about, I'm gonna say 2002, maybe 2003. And after I hit $250,000, I could not bear, I've got a condition I'm not supposed to be. It's, you know, a breathing condition. So when I know, you know, stress is not my friend. So I would venture to guess that it probably is double that. But I do have every billing, everything that's been paid. And, you know, it's available for me to give an estimate, but I would guesstimate $500,000, if not more.
And one other question, there was a guardian ad litem appointed by the court. For how long was that guardian ad litem appointed?
She had two. She had one about 2001, maybe 2000. Again, nothing very much is done. My ex-husband did a lot of calling, which I paid for because nobody forced him to pay. I was the only one forced to pay. They just allowed him not to pay. So, multitude of telephone calls, but never one call to me asking my side of the story or whatever. So there came to be a point that something had occurred and she just threw her hands up because you cannot fire them. She is a minor at the time. She's not allowed to fire them. She left the case. We didn't get another one until this case of 2003, Campbell Barrett. Guardian ad litem, I don't know really, I know what they do. I don't know what that translates to. But if it has anything to do with being the voice of a child, listening to a child, doing what's in the best interest of a child, that's not true.
And he himself admitted on the stand that he was not reaching out to me, he wasn't calling me, and that he figured he had an idea of what I was going to say. But he admitted that he was not making contact with me, even though I was trying to make contact with him to tell him what was going on.
And on his very first meeting and only meeting with my daughter, the very first thing he said to my daughter was, "You can call me anytime, even if you just want to talk about Harry Potter. At $300 an hour? I'm sorry.
And
That's appalling."
And I actually, the times I was calling him was to tell him I was being abused and that I had real issues going on, not because I wanted to chat with him. Like, I had real issues, and he outright refused and admitted to that.
But during that time, he took many, 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 many calls from her father. And I didn't find any of this out because just like the therapists, the GALs don't call the other side. Somebody had mentioned earlier, these cases are decided before you walk in the door. It's true. Trust me. And once you're the targeted parent, nothing will change their mind. So these guardian ad litem do nothing. They sit in a courtroom getting paid hourly to do nothing. They're the epitome of the potted plant. They cannot do any, file contempt charges. They can't do anything but supposedly be the voice of the children. Well, he was also the voice of her doctors, and he misrepresented everything that these people said. And Judge Grindell barred them because they didn't fit in and want to adopt the theory that there is one person responsible, and that's Karen Economou. So he falsely told this judge, without any paperwork, that these two doctors were saying it was my fault. They never said that. Never. So you have to think about that. He's up there spinning whatever lie he wants to victimize me more. And the other appalling thing that I should note is a disgrace for Judge Grindell to not have acted upon, this is along with his misconduct, was the fact that during a court break one time, Campbell is talking to two other lawyers in the hallway talking about my daughter. My daughter is a minor child. This is not Peyton Place, and there should be no gossiping about a case that has nothing to do with the other individuals, and surely not to let the public hear about my daughter. And they asked him, what are you going to do about the therapist note? Which came as a shock to me because I knew nothing about the therapist note, and how can two strangers know something that a parent doesn't know? And Campbell Barrett's response was, I'm going to tweak it. He got on the stand as soon as we came off a break, and he was questioned. And he admitted he said that. Now, he should have been fired on the spot. And if he weren't fired on the spot for that, certainly when he testified and admitted that he would not and did not return my daughter's telephone calls. He said he was too busy. Well, then if you're too busy, excuse yourself. But there's no excuse that you protect children who commit a crime and you don't disclose their name. But when a child is a victim of family court, it's a gossip session. And if you accept the PAS agreement, I feel that without a safeguard, you're going to set these children up for even more destruction in their life because no one bothered to put a safeguard into the GAL system.
Thank you so much. Thank you.